Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello girls, and welcome to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, C, one of the WFA's educators and a women's online coach. Today, I've got a special guest with me. I always say special guest, but she's very fucking special. Aww. Her name is Zoe Knight, and she is actually, have we changed it to Lehman?
No, he took my last name.
Okay, keep your last name. Zoe is the co-founder of Muscle Nerds. She is the woman behind all the scenes, all the admin, keeping everything in order and keeping Luke in order as well. For those who don't know Muscle Nerds, they are actually based in Brisbane. They are globally recognized as a health, wellness, and fitness center, but they also have designed this holistic way of programming to improve people's physical conditions through diet, exercise, and lifestyle. I know for a fact they do also one-on-one sessions and group training within their Brisbane-based centre. So if you're in Brisbane, go check it out. But they are also really huge on education for helping us trainers around the world, and they offer so much support and so many useful resources. Have I missed something, Zoe?
I don't think so. I think you might have made it sound better than it is.
Yeah. You guys are a pretty big deal. Since I've known you guys. Oh my God. I reckon it's been about over 5 years since I attended one of your courses. Wow.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it would be. And it would be maybe 4 years, because the last time I saw you was probably at our place in that little one-bedroom apartment that we had in Brisbane when you were there. What were you there for?
Oh my God, that was so long ago. I was on holiday there, yes. Yeah. I had a hen's party or something. Yeah, and I stopped by to say hello to you and Daisy.
The days that we can just pop into state and travel.
Oh, I miss those days.
Without a thought, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that overly generous introduction. We've got Pablo with us today.
Hey, Pablo.
I have to apologize in advance if we have any of the dogs coming in and barking and growling and snorting like pigs, but it's all right. We'll see what we can get by with.
Love it. Zoe, let's get straight into it. So you are the woman behind, Muscle Nerds. How has that been for you over these last few? Well, okay, first of all, how long has Muscle Nerds been around now?
6.5 years now. We started in, this is a really good story, actually. I'll start from the very beginning. We started in September of 2015. So, just under 6.5 years. This September will be our seventh year anniversary. And that blows my mind. But we started without planning to start. So that sounds really weird, but Luke and I, my husband, Luke Lehman, he used to work for an education company called Poliquin Group. He was mentored under Charles Poliquin and ended up taking over part of his position at Poliquin Group when Charles left and started Strength Sensei. So he traveled and taught for years before we started Muscle Nerds, and that's actually how I met him. Is I had been a personal trainer for I don't even know if it was a couple of years. It might have been a year and a bit. And I just super inquisitive by nature. So I just knew there was more to getting client results than the half an hour or 45-minute session that you had with them once or twice a week. So I heard about a course called Biosignature through Poliquin Group, through a trainer in the Gold Coast. His name was Tyrone. And I booked, they were coming to Sydney. I borrowed money off my parents, off my mum. I was like, can I play? I think it was $1,500 US. So it was $2,200, I think, from memory. And I was like, Mum, please, can I have this, borrow some money? I need to go do this course, because I was just a broke. She lent it to me. Flew to Sydney, did a 3-day course that Luke was the lecturer for, the teacher of. I didn't like him, to the point where when Poliquin Group sent their anonymous, well, I don't know if it was anonymous, but this survey after the course, and you gave all your feedback. Like I gave him bad reviews, and my feedback, I was like, I felt like you couldn't ask him questions. Like, anyway, I was just arrogant. I left him a bad review. He then, funnily enough, small world, after Sydney, I came back to Brisbane. He flew to the Gold Coast to stay with Tyrone. So like the trainer that I had heard about the course through. So it was kind of like a mutual person that we knew. He then added me on Facebook and asked me on a date, and I was like, absolutely not. What do you know what's really funny is I've told this story. Oh my lip pulse. Anyway, I've told this story numerous times, and I was like, no. I said no. We went back probably a couple months ago. We went back right to the start of our very first messages. I never said no. I said yes straight away, but then I avoided actually committing to the date for like 2 weeks, and he like hounded and I finally caved. Went on a date with him, went down to the Gold Coast, picked him up. It was just supposed to be dinner. When I picked him up, I just felt like we'd been together forever, because I just thought, fuck it, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
I was just like, fuck it, I'll just go on a date with him. It'll just be one weekend. I don't have to see him again because he's going back to America, because he's from Texas. I was like, he'll go back to America. It'll just be a fun weekend. Like, when was the last time I had one of these? Like, whatever. Went down, felt like we'd been together forever. I ended up staying down there for 4 days until he flew out back home. Then we kept in touch. So this is at the start of 2015. Then we kept in touch. We like talked, Skype, blah, blah. 3 months later, I sold my car. I quit both my jobs and I flew to America. I had only a 4-week trip booked. But I knew there was a really large chance that I wasn't going to want to come back after that 4 weeks. And I didn't want to be that person that called up my bosses from overseas and was like, hey, I'm not coming back. You got to fill my role. So I was like, I'll quit. I know there's a chance I won't come back. I'll just, worst case scenario, who does turn out to be a dick. And then I'll just come back to Australia and get a new job. Like, it's no big deal. Anyway, went over. Everything was great. I came up to the 4 weeks when my flight was due to come home, and I was like, I'm not coming home. So I changed it and extended it to like the 90 day, like day 89. Shit, Frank just failed on the chair. Day 89. And then within that period from me changing my flights to like leaving, Luke finished up at Poliquin Group. And so we were like, oh, like we are both jobless. And I only had enough money to last me the 3 months. So we literally announced the next day that we were taking clients online and through Muscle Nerds. Like, we just created Muscle Nerds because Muscle Nerd was a nickname that Luke had been given from an old employee of his, like an old co-worker. So one of his co-workers created like this fake Facebook account of Luke in satire, and it was a picture. The picture that he used for his profile picture was like Luke, because he used to have glasses until we got him LASIK, but he had glasses, and then he was like measuring his bicep, and it was like some ridiculous size. And so he called him on this Facebook page like Muscle Nerd. So that's where Muscle Nerds came from. And yeah, we just announced it. And then from that point, we were just very, very lucky in that we were inundated with people who wanted to work with Luke that hadn't wanted to work with Poliquin Group. So we were just really reactive to what people wanted. So the very first thing, we were in Rhode Island in America at the time that this happened. And he then got contacted and asked to speak at a symposium Swiss in Canada. So that was, we just like, okay. So we went there. And then he got contacted by someone in Kuwait who wanted him to teach his trainers. He worked at this fitness retreat, or this big retreat that had like a fitness center. And I think there was like 30 trainers that worked out of there. And so we were like, all right. So this guy flew us to Kuwait. And then we're like, well, while we're here, we might as well hold a seminar in Dubai. So we had one in Dubai. And then we went home to New Zealand to Christmas for him to meet my family. Like, while we're here, we might as well hold a seminar here. And that's literally what we did for like 2 years until we could legally live together. And it wasn't until we decided that we would try and get him a visa here in Australia that we actually sat down and we were like, what do we actually want to deliver? Like, at that point for 2 years, we were just accepting whatever was asked of us, and we just make up yep, we can do that. We'll put it together now, like, type thing. Very, very reactive. And that was a real struggle for me, because obviously, like, Luke and I were in our complete infancy of our relationship. Like, I think we had been on the one date, talking for 3 months, and then together for like 5 weeks. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, I really felt at that whole start of it, like I did all the back end stuff, like admin, keeping track of spreadsheets, because that's all we had at the start was like spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet to track everything, because like we had no business plan, we had no systems, no structure, nothing. It was just like, yep, we'll do that and we'll figure out a way to make it work. So everything was really manual. But I really struggled at the start because I was like, this is Luke's show. Like, Muscle Nerds is Luke's. Like, I am not entitled to this money that's coming in, even though I was like running out. I remember the last thing I think I had like $23 left in my account, and we were in Washington at the time. And I went out one morning and I spent my last money on like food for breakfast. Like, I remember that. And I was like, I'm literally in his hands now. Like, it was just I remember calling one of my friends and just being like, I'm really uncomfortable about this, but I also have such a good feeling about everything else. Do you know what I mean? Like, Luke never made me feel like I wasn't part of it, but it was just that struggle of feeling like I hadn't earned anything. That has since changed. Now that like a lot, like it took a good, I think it was probably like 2 years, like building a business with someone that you're learning personally and professionally whilst being homeless and traveling the world. While that sounds glamorous, was absolutely not. Like, it was all the cons of traveling and not a lot of the pros. It's like people was like, oh my God, like, what was this place like? And I was like, well, a hotel in Dubai looks the same as a hotel in London, looks the same as a hotel in Hong Kong. Like, we would get maybe like half a day to go out and kind of explore, because we were just like needing to make money to get on to the next place that we could go to where we could be together. But yeah, so that was that was the start of Muscle Nerds. It was interesting to say the least. There was a lot of arguments at the start because Luke and I are polar opposite in how we work. I am methodical. I am somewhat organized.
You are very organized.
Like small details, like, do you know what I mean? Whereas Luke is very big picture, has an idea, let's do it, doesn't realize what actually goes into it. He is ADD, so at the time, like, he wasn't medicated for it, so it was just like I had to watch a lot of videos on YouTube to understand the brain of someone that ADD, because I was just like, why don't you just do this? Like, why can't I just don't understand why you're working like this? And so the only arguments like we ever had were about work. Like, I don't think we've ever had a personal argument. It's always been about work. And in hindsight, now that we've got our groove, it's such a compliment that we are so opposite, because his strengths are my weaknesses and my weaknesses are and my strengths are his weaknesses. So it's like a really complementing skill set that we have. It's just letting go of how I want things to do and letting him work how he works. So in the years since we decided to get him his visa here in Australia and then settle here and actually say, okay, like, where to from here? What do we actually want to do and deliver? And how do we want to spend our days? We just made sure that we set up a structure that worked to his strengths, and kind of everyone else around was to support that. So he can just do what he does best, which is just reading, learning, researching, and teaching. And then we'll just trail behind him and clean up the mess.
All of the mess.
All of the mess. He's actually not too bad now. We've kind of got into a really good groove after like 6.5 years. But that was the start of Muscle Nerds. That was the start of it. We learned every single thing as we went. I feel like when I speak about this with a lot of people, and and they come, it sounds so obnoxious, like they come to business advice, they don't, but like I've had a couple conversations in the past with people about business and stuff, and I just feel like I'm the wrong person to ask, because of the fact we were so lucky that Luke already had that reputation. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle with, is how easily it came to us. Not saying that the work itself, but we really like I said, he had a reputation. We were able to utilize that a lot in the first years, like just the network of people that already knew and respected him and knew what he had to offer. Since then, like, it's changed so much. Like, we've kind of exhausted that group of people, and now it's like, all right, well, we need to branch out and try and reach more people than the people that know of us. And that's where I think the struggle begins, because man, we just get smashed with people who are so good at social media and so good at marketing. Like it's really changed just in the 6 years since we started. Like there's so many more things on offer. There's so many more educators popping up. There's so many more courses to do. So it's kind of like now we're like, oh, now's the time to get serious about business and marketing and sales, where it's not something we ever had to consider at the start. So that's kind of where we're at now. It's like 2022 plans are, we really need to get better at like showcasing ourselves. And it's unfortunately not something any of us want to do, but we don't really show too much face behind Muscle Nerds. Like if you look at our socials, it's kind of like, it's just a lot of tech stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's just a lot of tiles. So that's something that we're working on this year. Hopefully Luke's decided he wants to start doing some of his own podcasts, which will be interesting. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of Luke's podcasts, but
I've listened to his old ones, the ones that you guys used to sit on the couch together and have your
yeah.
God, those were classics. You two together. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing. He won't let me be on them.
Why?
He asked too many questions. I was like, I promise I won't ask you any questions. So you asked no anyway. So I'll see if I can weasel my way in there. But another thing that I actually really wanted to start doing this year as well is more like vlogging style stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I bought a vlogging camera and I just can't bring myself to do it. But I need to, because what I regret doing the last 6 years is I didn't keep record of anything. Like I wish I had documented somehow our journey, or like just what we had done and been through to get from where we were and where we started to where we are now, because man, we've been through some stuff and we've made some fucking big mistakes. And I actually listened to a podcast a while ago. I think it was Australian Strength Coaches and Base Body Babes. It was either their first or their second one that they put out back when they decided to start doing the podcast. And I listened to one of them and they spoke about like their journey, their gyms, like opening the gym that they had in Sydney initially and to where they are now. And they spoke about how much it cost them. And I was like, this is amazing. Like no one talks about money. Not that I want to get on and be like, so this is how much we brought in this week and this is where it went. But it's just like literally no one speaks about the struggles of like, they all say, oh, look, I'm going to be really transparent with you, but they really hold back so many details. What I really would love to do is start doing some type of vlogging. Again, I'll just have to get past not, being shitty at it for a while. But I want to showcase, I initially wanted to just be like behind the business. That's what I wanted to be called, but I Googled it and it's already taken. So I was like, maybe we'll just do like behind Muscle Nerds. That's not as cool. Or like someone said to me, like, what about behind the brains? And I was like, that sounds obnoxious. So I need to think of what I want to call it. But essentially I just wanted to be like behind the business. Like this is what it takes to run a business. Like this is where we've fucked up and where we continue to fuck up and where we do excel things, do things well. And this is what we're learning, because we are learning everything as we go and we're still learning. Like at the end of every financial year, I'm like, man, we fucked that up. And it's just like next year we won't do that, but we don't do it, but we make another mistake. But I really want to showcase that side of stuff. There's a dynamic between Luke and I, which I think is really cool, but obviously I'm biased. And I think like that's kind of like our unique point to Muscle Nerds, but we don't utilize showcasing that at all. It's just like, I don't know, rants on social media about stuff. But yeah, there's my little waffle about how we started and where we are now.
I love it. It's so good. I actually didn't know where Muscle Nerds name came from, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah,
why it's called Muscle Nerds right now.
I know. It's like perfect for Luke. I mean, he's not as big now and he doesn't wear glasses anymore, but he's still
don't say that too loud. He'll get offensive.
Oh, he's been trying to lose weight. He's just sick of being like, I mean, he's 44 in February. And he's just sick of being the biggest guy in the room. Sick of wanting to try. Well, when in his younger years, it's like, that's all it was, right? Let's just be the biggest, baddest motherfucker in the room. And he's like, man, I just want to like feel better and move well and not have my knees hurt. Like, so
those bloody knees, they get you.
Yeah. So his journey now, like his goal now is just to like be healthier, move better, be more mobile, like just feel good. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's lost like because he's, oh my God, like probably like 15, almost 20 kilos of just
Wow,
muscle.
that's so much.
And his calves used to be like this big and now they're like this big. I remember once we were in a gym in Chicago and the gym just had this huge glass, like it was just glass that ran along like the street front. And I remember we were in there once and some guy was walking past and he bangs on the window and like Luke turns around. He's like, your calves are huge. And I was like, they're so much smaller than they used to be.
Oh my God. So for those who don't know who Luke is, make sure that you go on Muscle Nerds Instagram page and you'll know exactly why we're talking about how big he was and, you know, how relatively small he is. I still think he's bloody huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, everything's big in Texas, right? Including the people. So I think he's like in his height, like mid-90s now. So he used to be like, I think when I met him, he might have been like 110, like lean. So
Yeah.
still
He's always been really lean. Like I remember him being really like big and buff, but recent pictures, I think was it his 40th as well, and he
like his 42nd or something, I think it was.
he got so shredded.
He looks really good. He actually, once we were overseas, so the trouble with, well, I mean, like, God, such a privilege to have this trouble, but when you're traveling, so we traveled for 2 years constantly, like we didn't have a home, and the trouble with doing that is every time you go to a different country or whatever, there's like a food that you're like, I can only get here. I'm gonna eat it while I'm here. I'm not gonna, like, you know, in Texas you've got barbecue and Tex-Mex, and then like London's got, funnily enough, really good Indian food. And like, yeah, every country just has its kind of thing. And we were in Texas for a few months and Luke's just like, I'm just gonna eat like all of the barbecue and Tex-Mex that I can. And he's like, I'm just going to get as big as I can. And I think he said to me, like, would you still love me if I was like overweight? And I was like, of course I would. He's like, all right then. And he spent like 3 months eating. Like, I'm not even kidding. He would eat 2 or 3 dinners every time we went out, and he'd just order another one and he'd just be poking it in. And it got to the point where I said to him, I think he got up to like 120 something, maybe 120 something kilos. And I was like, do you know what? I would leave you. And I was like, the sound of you fucking snoring and breathing like that, I was like, I'm going to stab you in your sleep. So I was like, it's not because you're big, it's because, and like, he just got like so lazy. He was just like, nope. Like, and I was like, nah. So he hasn't always been shredded, but he definitely prioritizes his health and his diet, which is something that I admire because I prioritize work. He prioritizes, like, he's like, I don't care, I'm getting my workout and like this can wait. Whereas I'm like, no, this can't wait. Like, if it's there, I have to get it done. So it's kind of like we need to blend ourselves to find like a nice happy median.
And this is why you guys work so well. Like he's
we are
like
polar opposites in everything. It's actually been like probably the biggest personal journey being with Luke, because I just have to question. So especially at the start, I just had to question like so many things about like, why does that annoy me? Like, why do I want him to work this way instead of how he's working? And it was just like a control thing at the end of the day. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, just do what you want. We'll make it work. And yeah, we're everything like tastes. We leased a small little clinic studio thing when Luke decided he wanted to do, well, he was going to do some like manual therapy. So in a suburb that we lived in, we had this little, it was 16 or 18 meters square. It was tiny, but we fit in like a reception desk and like a treatment table, and there's like a little sink area. Anyway, we could not agree on how to fit it out. So we ended up chopping the whole thing in half. I had a half that I designed, and then he had a half that he designed. And mine, like, I did the reception front area, and it was just this like white walls, wood, beautiful like reception desk that like lit up from behind. And then there were these sliding doors. My side was white and wood, then his side black, like silver ceiling. Like, he did this big blackboard wall so he could put his chalk all over it, and then like his side of the doors were like black. So it was literally like we just cut it in half, and I was like, all right, you do yours however you want to do it, and I'll do mine. So that's kind of like how we compromise with things. So we're just like, all right, this is how we do it.
I love that. That's hilarious. And knowing Luke as well, like I could see why he'd want it his way, and you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned a really good point before about how you listened to the Australian Strength Coach podcast about business and about like how they were so open about, you know, their money situation and like owning a gym and the business side of things. And I believe many people don't speak enough about this. They either glamorize their work saying, oh, everything's going well. Like I was thriving so well during COVID. It's just like, what about those who are not thriving? You know, like I went through a really bad time during COVID lockdown, and I'm sure you guys, like, I know you guys have as well. And yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, it's like
I don't know.
a scarcity of being like vulnerable and like being honest.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, like there's just such a persona that is put on of success that I think, and people even glamorize their failures. Like that's what's, I don't know, like it's really tough, but there needs to be, it's so hard because I was raised like you never talk about money. Like you never talk about money, religion or politics, to the point where like I remember when there was an election in New Zealand when I was young, and I said to my parent, like I think I said to my dad or my mum, I was like, who are you voting for? And she's like, you don't ask that. Fucking look at us now, like we're putting signs in our front lawns and shit. Like I wish we could go back to that. But yeah, so it was brought up like that. But I also think though that not being transparent about it, and even when people are transparent, they still don't talk in detail. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're just like, oh yeah, I struggled, like I had more debt than I had. It was like, man, talk numbers, like especially for people coming into buying. Like we bought a gym 5 days before COVID lockdowns, and it was just like you couldn't unless you had a direct mentor who was privately open with you. You really couldn't find figures on what to expect, on like what people had done in the past and how much they had put into it to set it up and how much they had saved before they bought it and how much they bought it for. And like, whereas they did, like they spoke, and I think they said, you know, like one of their small female one, they think they were like, it cost them like 200 grand to set up. And then I think his one was like, I think he said maybe 500,000. And obviously he's top tier everything. But I was like, those figures would probably shock a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that's the reality if you want something like that. And you know what? It's the similar concept of when you look at like your favorite influencer or fitness person and you're like, oh, I want what they've got. You have no idea how hard they've worked in like the years prior and how consistent and dedicated they've had to be to get to that point. And it's similar with like business. It's like, you know, you look at that and you're like, oh, I really want a gym like that one day. And it's like, okay, but do you know what it takes to get there? Like how hard and how much you have to save, or how much debt you have to accrue, or how much, you know, loans you have to take, or like it's just, yeah, like it's not. You know what, though? There probably is talked about, and I'm just not looking in the right places. But generally speaking, like I'm sure there might be someone following, like listening and being like, this guy's got a book on it. Or like, this podcast and they
send us the book, please.
Yeah, send us the book, send us the podcast. Like I'm sure there are people that talk about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Social media is such a hard thing. There's so many pros and so many cons. And one of the cons, I think, is just that people portray doing well, and even those that are doing well, like you just feel like you should be. And it's like you're allowed to struggle, like you're allowed to make mistakes, you're allowed to be like, oh yeah, we're not doing as well. Like what actually started me thinking about this a while ago was we had worked with some videographers a few years ago, like prior to lockdown, because they're located in Sydney, so they used to come up, shoot our stuff and whatever. And we obviously like lost touch for a while because we couldn't utilize them throughout the lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. And she sent me a message not that long ago, and she's like, hey, like how good to you, just checking in, like it looks like you guys are doing really well. And I was like, does it? Wow, like because we're not like do you know what I mean? And I was like, what? That's something. And then there's been people in the past who've been like, oh man, it looks like you guys are killing it. And I was like, how does it look like that? Like what are we putting out there that makes it look like we're fucking thriving? Like obviously we're not on the bones of our ass, but we're definitely not like swimming in profit. Like I think there's so much more expense to stuff that people realize, and it's just like, I don't know, to make a killer profit, man, you've got to be doing something, you've got to be huge, maybe. I don't know.
It's so
hard.
so funny that you mentioned about how people perceive you for doing well because of what you're putting out on social media. It's just like you have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's like me putting a client's achievement as a testimonial on my story or post, and people will be like, "Oh my God, you're doing so good." It's just like, am I though? Like,
Yeah.
you don't know.
I've got 3 clients over here I'm really struggling with that I just can't get them to be compliant. But I don't know. But then it's in the same breath, like you get people who are kind of like raw and real, and then people roll their eyes at them. So it's like, where do you find that balance, or how do you find that balance? And I don't know, that's one thing where I was talking to you about kind of before we started recording, is like this year I really want to try. I shouldn't say try. I should say I'm going to do it.
I'll do it.
Some like vlogging, and that's like not because I think we're so interesting that people are going to want to watch what we do all day, but because this Muscle Nerds has been around just over 6 years, almost 6.5 years, and I just wish I had recorded or kept documents or records, something of our entire journey, like what we'd been through, the decisions we had to make, the hard points, like the high points. I just wish we'd recorded that. And so this year I wanted to start, and I wanted to do it more along the lines of for selfish reasons, just because I've got some pretty big goals this year. There's a computer software that we are in the initial stages of trying to make, and so that'll be like a year or two in the makings, and I want to really document like the actual, like what it takes behind that, because it got to a point where last year I think I said to Luke, I was like, everyone is coming out with an app. Like everyone, like every influencer, every educator, they've got their own app. And I was like, we're going to be like Nokia. Like, I don't know if you've heard the story about Nokia, but Nokia did nothing wrong, right? Like, remember the Nokia phones, right? They did nothing wrong. All that happened for them to completely like turn to shit was Apple came along and did something better. So it's like they came along and innovated and did something better, and then Nokia just did not keep up. That's all they did. So I was like, well, I don't want to be like Nokia. And I was like, it's almost getting to the point where it's like, we have to have an app, especially being an online training business and how fast technology is growing. It's like, we have to have something. And I said to Luke, I was like, I don't want to make an app for the sake of making an app. Like all these other influencers have all got apps. They all do exactly the same fucking thing. They're just different interfaces and they're just different pictures. And it's like, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But I was like, but if you don't, you're like left in the dust. So I was like, well, what can we do? How can we bring out something that keeps us up to date and somewhat relevant? But there's nothing out there like that. So there's like an education based computer software that I have this wild idea of trying to make, and I'm scared by the enormity of it. Like the amount of work that has to go into the back end of it is terrifying. But I had the idea a year ago, and I was like, if I had just pulled the pin then, we'd be a year into it now. So I'm just like, this is the year I'm going to do it. And so I just want to start vlogging for that reason, because I really want this documented. I would love to highlight and showcase that. And also, just like I said earlier, to showcase Luke and I, like we have a dynamic that's really unique to us. We don't show it. There's this huge side of Luke that people just would never know was there. He's hilariously childlike.
Yes, he is.
So like this, he just puts so much of his adult traits into like learning, researching, teaching, that when he stops doing that, he's just like this goofball of fun. Like he's just so hilarious. But anyway, so there's so much stuff that I kind of want to start doing, but more so just to highlight like behind the business, or like behind Muscle Nerds, and just try to have those like really transparent conversations. Like, yeah, man, we have not, like we haven't brought in profit for 3 weeks. What are we going to do? Like, how are we going to change this? How do we get to this position? Like, how much did it cost to set up the gym, buy the gym, run the gym? Like, you know what I mean? And there's just a lot of stuff that I think there should be some conversations being had. And whilst I'm probably not the right person to have them, it's just like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, fuck it. Let's do
I think
it.
that would be awesome. And just put like being a little bit more transparent around it as well. And not for like everyone else's sake, but like for your sake, just to see the journey. Like you said, you know, I wish you did a little bit of vlogging, you know, 6 years prior to starting. Like you still have all these memories in your head, and you can, you know, reflect back on how you met and what you did. But like when you have it right there in front of you, it's just like, wow, like I've actually made this far.
And I've forgotten so much. Honestly, I've forgotten so many places we've been, so many people we've met, so many things we've done. Like Luke will now and again be like, man, do you remember that time that we were like here and like this happened? And I was like, no. I don't. Or like I'll be like, I'll see something and I'll be like, oh my God, that's right. We did that once. Or like we've been through that. You know what I mean? It's not until you kind of start having conversations. But I just wish, and I don't want to look back on this year and have achieved whatever it is we're going to achieve this year and be like, man, I wish I had recorded that. So I want to start doing that and putting it out there. I mean, like I could just do it for like personal records, but I'm like, why not just chuck it out there and see, even if it's one person watches it and it's like, oh, this is like either inspiring or interesting or like learn something from it, like that's cool.
I reckon it will be really useful, especially for those who are just entering the fitness industry, to have a better understanding of what business really is. Because like you said, you know, people love flashing out the big money and, you know, them showing you the highlights of what business it's like. But as you mentioned, you are going to fail. You are going to make these mistakes along the way, and that's part of life.
Yeah, 100%. There's just, I don't know, there's just so much like, you know, people bang on about how busy it is and how hard it is and that sorts of stuff. It's like, well, what are you busy with? What is it? Tell me the nitty gritty. I want to know the nitty gritty. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. Like, what is it that's hard? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like people, and then that's another thing is people like to portray like it's hard and it's hustling and all this stuff. And whilst it's like difficult, it is hard. It is like a lot of work. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's still so many benefits to it. And I think one of the things that I found hardest to learn and wrap my head around was like working for yourself. Everyone's like, I want to work for myself. I want that freedom. Or I want to work online. Like I want to work online. It gives me that freedom. It does not give you freedom. It gives you flexibility. And that flexibility, if you don't have like exceptional time management skills and discipline, that flexibility fucks you in the ass. Like it really does. So that's something I learned the hard way, because I was just like, especially, so obviously we traveled for 2 years to that. When we settled back in Australia and I had friends and like all my friends around, and they were like, hey, do you want to go and do this then? I was like, yeah, like I can do that then. Of course I can. And then I'll shuffle this shit around everywhere else. And then if I was like calling for a dentist appointment or like whatever, they'd be like, can you do 11 on Tuesday? I was like, I can do 11 on Tuesday. Before you know it, you've like chucked like all these random things throughout your week, and then you've got no structure and you're scrambling trying to fit shit in around it. So it's like, it gives you like not freedom, it gives you flexibility. You still have things that are time sensitive that you have to get to your clients at certain times and by, you know, in certain ways. But that flexibility, if you don't give yourself structure and you're disciplined with that and have good time management, it really is not a pro at all. Like there's so many times where I was like, oh my God, I would just love and going to do an 8 to 5 and come home, and my home time is my home time. Like I would love that. But when I actually think about going and doing that, I'm like, no, I don't want to leave my dogs.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And I'm really glad that you mentioned about the flexibility and managing your time, because I remember years ago, before I even went into the online space, people would sell me this idea, oh, you know, once you become an online coach, you'll have this freedom to do everything you want and, you know, make so much money and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And all these gurus like fed you this bullshit idea of how your life's going to be once you know, have your own business. And like Zoe said, it's not like that. Like there is flexibility, but you also need to make sure that you're putting things in place to keep up flow.
Yeah, 100%. And there's still got to be some structure. There's still going to be some rigidity. There was a really good, I think Hattie speaks about it a lot, is how discipline actually brings freedom. And it's so true. Like it's honestly so true. Like if you don't give yourself or set yourself any type of schedule or routine. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe it was like routine gives you, I can't remember. It was along those lines. I'm probably paraphrasing, and she might, not that she'll listen to it. I'm sorry I butchered it, but if we ever got back to her, she might be like, no, that's not it, but it's along those lines. And it's honestly so true. Like if you just say, all right, I'm just going to do whatever I want whenever I want, like it's so depressing. Like you're just constantly chasing your tail, and you're constantly like, oh, I've got so much to do and I'm overwhelmed. Whereas if you just have that structure, which takes away the point of working for yourself. It's almost harder not having anyone to answer to.
Yeah, it gets lonely sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like, and especially I'm a real people pleaser, so not having anyone that I'm doing it for other than myself is sometimes really difficult, because I would let myself down before I would let other people down, and so that's another thing that I've kind of like really struggled with. But yeah, oh man, so many emotions in running your own business.
I know, right? You don't even like notice it till you actually speak about it. You're like, wow,
you review it.
I still want to run this business.
Yeah. There's only so many, there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
I really envy the people who can like delegate well though. Or like can have like, finding people is like the most important thing too, I reckon. If you get to a point where you need help, finding the right people is so hard. We've been so lucky, but finding the right people is so hard. People just don't want to work these days. So I blame social media for betraying this life of like doing minimal but having maximal.
Yeah.
Blame that. Anyway, still got to work.
There's going to be some point at anyone's business journey that they're going to have to work hard. Like,
oh yeah.
That's what it takes for you to be successful, and whatever successful looks like, for you, there's going to be some form of discipline, like you mentioned, to put in the hard yard before you're able to like delegate it.
Yeah. Another question I've been asking myself for like the last 6 months, I actually made a post on it not that long ago, is there's always this pressure or this expectation, and a lot of the time it's just by default, to want to do more, have more, be more. Like it's just like, all right, what's do bigger, better. It's like, what's the next thing? How can I make this better? And so we've done that in the past, and this is something that I one of the main things I wish I documented. Like we were like, okay, what's the next step? We've got this money, where do we spend it on? We hire a new employee. We'd hire that new employee without even considering like, okay, so how is this employee going to like benefit? Where are they going to fit in? What is their structure going to be? How are they going to like make profit for the business? Or it's like, okay, let's hire this. Like I said, we fitted out the thing. It's like, we just did that because it was like, well, what do? We've made some profit this year. What's the next step? Oh, we get a little clinic. And it's just like, we had no business plan for that. And that was a big flop. Similar with buying the gym. And it's kind of like, you have this thing where you're like, let's do more, be more. Like, what's the next step? Okay, I've got this. How do I make it better? I've started to ask like, why? Why do you want more? Why do you want to do more? Why do you want to have more? Why do you want to do bigger, better? At what expense? Like at what expense do you want to do that? Because it got to the point where it's like every time we created another level, it was just more work. So it wasn't done well. Like I didn't plan it out well. I didn't think like, okay, is this going to take load off me and make my life easier? Is it going to load on me and make it harder? And for what expense? Like, there's been so many things. So now I'm just like, I'm so happy where I am. Like I'm comfortable. What I want to start doing now is managing what we've got better. And then when that's optimized, then maybe I work on free time, like freeing up some time, as opposed to just bringing in more money or more income or more trying to get more followers. It's like, no, let's just optimize what I've got. And what can I do next that's going to give me some like of my life back? Because that's what matters more. It's like, we've got enough to pay our bills and get by. That's cool. That's all we need. Like, why would I want to bust my ass just to have like 5 cars and 3 houses? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that's where I'm at right now. Like a few years ago, I would have been like, yeah, because that's success. Like that's what success is, right? Like having so much stuff. Nah, having time. to me is success. And it's just like, I don't know, there's some years you want to put in prior to that to set it up to be able to have that, like do the hard work now to like reap benefits later and everything. But I just think there needs to be a little bit of a mind shift as to like what those benefits are, because benefits is like financial security and all that sort of stuff. It's like, what does that look like? Because at the end of the day, all it means is free time.
Yeah.
Instead of like lots of fucking materialistic shit.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because like years ago, I perceived success as like, having the fancy cars, having the branded clothing, like going to like wonderful restaurants. And you know what? It's so annoying because it's still perceived as success these days.
Yeah, well, that's all you can show, right? Like, and it's the same with like before and after pictures in that fitness industry. That's what you can show. You can't show that they feel more confident, that they can now get unchanged in front of their partner with the light on, that they now sleep better, that their labs are better, that they've got more energy, that they can play with their children, that they're not waking up feeling tired. Like, you can't show that. You can only show, and it's like why social media only can be considered for such a small fraction of like fucking life and business and work. And you can get people that talk about it till they're blue in the face, but it's like until you experience it or have something that you can relate to, like you don't understand it. And that's why, the physical stuff works so well, because it can be shown. Like, I can show you my physique transformation. I can show you my car and my house and, that sort of stuff. It's like, fuck, show me your bank account then.
Yeah.
It's in the fucking red.
Yeah.
You're just leaving that car. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But then you get so much, if someone did show their bank account, they're like, with $1 million I got in my bank account, you'd be like, what a dick. You know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting. The whole thing is just so interesting.
Yeah, it's yeah, you know what? It's like, again, like we perceive things so differently, and I guess like you and I are on a very like similar wavelength, that it's not all just about materialistic things. It's about you getting your time back. We're working the hard yard now, where eventually, whether it's like a year's time, 5 years time, sitting back and being able to read a book for 2 hours without having to panic about a client or
feeling guilty about it, like, and just being like, because that's it. And that's another thing, like, you would understand this is like, you can have time off, but your time off is never time off. You're always thinking about what you should be doing instead. You feel guilty for it. Even if you get to the point where you're like, no, I'm going to spend this 2 hours reading my book or playing with my dogs or going to the beach or whatever, I'm going to spend this time. And even if you're in the moment, the minute you start to come out of it, you're like, fuck, now I've got so much shit to catch up on. Like, oh my God, that taking that day off just means I'm going to have like double the workload tomorrow, because there's no one that's going to do it for you when you're away. It's not as if like you're a receptionist and you can just be like, oh, I'm not coming in today, and someone else does your job while you're gone. It's like, imagine coming back the next day and every single phone call that came through the day before now comes through with that. Every single like person you greet or meet or form you have to fill out is double. Like, you just double your workload when you have time off. And you just have that guilty feeling, or not even guilty. It's just more like that feeling of overwhelm, knowing like, if I take this time off, there's shit that's not being done.
Yeah.
So to be able to like set up so it still gets done somehow, or it's not a priority, or it's not so time sensitive, that's probably like my goal. And also to be able to buy more dogs.
Yes, all the dogs.
That's the reason I want to own a home, is so we can have dogs.
So for those who don't know, Zoe already has 3 dogs, and I reckon she'll probably have another 2 by the end of this year.
So do you know what? Luke picked up my phone like a few months ago. He's like, chuck me your phone for a second. And I was like, sure. And he just wanted to like Google something. So he opened my Safari, and he goes to me, he opens Safari, he goes like this. He's like, babe, can you please stop looking up disabled dogs to adopt? Because that was like the last thing that I'd been on. I want to like adopt like all the elderly ones and the disabled ones, and ones that don't have like anywhere to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've got to own a home before we can do that. So there's benefits to money for sure.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, it is money that buys you that time and that freedom. But I think you just then have to start being a little bit more realistic about what it is you actually need. Like, I went on this shoe buying kick throughout December. Actually, it was the Black Friday sales. I was like, because there's been shoes that I've just wanted for years. And I was like, I'm going to fucking buy the shoes. Anyway, I ended up buying like a bunch of shoes, and I was like, did I really need to do that? Well, that really could have gone towards the house deposit. And I was like, I don't know. There's like a fine line, right? Some people are so fine with just like cutting off anything that they do not need at all and just living so frugally. I've tried to be that person. I can't be that person because I still feel like, and Luke's quite similar. We need that like constant, not constant, but frequent feeling of like, if I want something, I can buy it, because it's almost like that those little reminders that your work, the hard work you're doing is going towards something, like you're getting something out of it. Like I just don't think I could work this hard and live on 2-minute noodles.
No way. No, that's not
But
living.
I enjoy like some of the finer bits of life. But do you know what? Like everything, like Luke says, he's really big with saying in the industry, like everything's an extreme, right? Like people, the only way to make waves is if you have a really extreme opinion. And he's like, it's obviously a problem, but he says, they're both wrong and they're both right, and somewhere in the middle lies the answer. So he's really big at saying, so you've got someone that's like all for like veganism, and then you've got someone that's all for carnivore. He's like, they're both wrong, they're both right, but the answer is like obviously a balance between the two. And that's the case with life, right? But it's just finding like what balance, like I use that word like this, is like, what's your, like, where's your middle?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like someone's middle might be like, they might be completely fine with, you know, being over here or being over here. But yeah, I don't know. Try finding the middle. Try live my life somewhat in the middle, where I'm still like working towards setting up a really good future, but also trying to enjoy life as we go.
It's a work in progress.
Oh, isn't it always? Like, I don't know if you ever find the answer. And it's another thing I think I figured out is like literally everyone's figuring shit out as they go.
100%.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one person that's got it all sorted.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter what stage in life you're at, like whether you're like a teenager or like an adult woman, or you're a business owner, or you're a mum of 4, you know, kids or dogs. You know, you just have to figure life out as you go. Yeah.
100%. Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, life is definitely interesting. And you know what? Like COVID has taught us a lot of that lately.
Oh, I know, right? Like what a mess this 2 years has been.
Yeah.
10 people have thrived. Like imagine like just owning a fucking mask business, just doing masks, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I've got my 5 houses and my 3 cars because I made masks at just the right time.
Literally, oh my God, so many businesses did that. It was crazy.
I know, you either thrived or you kind of like just got by. It's really upsetting. I don't know. I've really buried my head in the sand with the whole COVID thing over the last couple of years, to be honest. Like it is not something I want to give a lot of attention to. We brought the gym 5 days before COVID shut us down. So we were, again, just really lucky that we had muscle nerds. I feel like luck. Let's talk on luck for a second, because I argue both points of this. I do feel like I'm very lucky, but in the same breath, I took risks to create that luck. And this is something that I had to, when I was mentioning earlier, how when we started Muscle Nerds and I was like, I'm just riding on Luke's coattails. Like, I don't deserve any of this. This isn't mine. Anyway, that at that start, I was like, I'm so lucky that I'm in this situation. We're so lucky that we've got people that just want to work with us. It's like, yes, but I took that risk from like, what did I do? Delete my jobs. I'm trying to say, what did I do? I quit my jobs. I was like, I quit my job. I couldn't find the word. I was like, why does delete want to come out? I quit my jobs. I sold my car. I took a risk. And to be honest, like at that time, it was the risk felt worse. It was more of a risk not to do it. Like that's how it felt. I was like, if I don't do this, I'm just my whole life, I'm going to be like, what if I just done it? Like, do you know what I mean? And and then the luck with having the clients, like that's 25 years of Luke's fucking hard work. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yes, we're lucky, but we were smart enough to recognize luck as it appeared and actioned it. And that's something that I think a lot of people aren't understanding. It's like, man, you're so lucky that fell in your lap, or you're so lucky that this happened, or you're so lucky that, you know, I mean, luck's the only real luck is buying a lot, like winning the lotto. But you took that risk of buying it, well, not risk of buying a ticket, but you bought the ticket. You've actually have to do something for luck to happen. And you have to recognize when it's staring you in the face and when to take the risk and action it. So luck is never just luck. But anyway, I forgot what I was talking about before I said that, but I feel very lucky. What was I saying? Anyway, it's gone. But anyway, that's my rant on luck, because I just think it's not all luck.
There's a certain like fine line of like you being lucky, whether it's like you being, fed with money since you were like born, and that's a form of like luxury that
forget about those people.
Yeah, that some people
have. Lucky though, like maybe you get fed money from since you were born, but you're probably going to be a piece of shit because of it. Like, what are the chances you've got a really good work ethic, really good morals, and understand the value of a dollar? I'd rather have that than be fed money, honestly. And I remember, like, of course, am I just saying that because I wasn't fed money? Like, if I was offered to be fed money, would I say no?
Probably we don't know. Yeah.
I wouldn't be like, no, I'm going to take my moral high ground and I'm going to go and work for it. I'd be like, give me the money. But I would be good with it. I would rescue dogs.
Oh my God. What we were talking about before about the COVID struggle.
We brought the gym and we were really lucky that we had muscle nerds to float it. Yeah. And I buried my head in the sand about COVID. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we made at the gym, very early on, we made a no COVID conversation rule at the gym. So anyone that was in the gym was not allowed to talk about COVID because it was fucking everywhere. It was everywhere, and it's so divisive. I know for a fact we have members who are very like those two extremes. And the problem again, and this is I don't know, something that social media has done, or whether it's always been. I think it's probably always been a case. Like, maybe comfort lies in extremes, I don't know, but because it doesn't offer, you have to think about too much. It's just like a blanket black and white rule that you have to follow. But the problem is, like, you are either like a sheep or you're an anti-vax. And it's like, no, it's not that simple. So we have those people, and the extremes with either party are just making bad raps for. Anyway, there's a lot of people that I know, like, we do have some members of the gym that are on this side and some members that are on that side. A lot of them are kind of like, it's like a spectrum, like floating along the middle, depending on the experiences they have and what they read and hear or whatever, or are told. So we ended up just making like a no COVID conversation rule, because there was a couple of people who, funnily enough, one person on this end and one person on this end got talking about it, and I think one ended up just storming out of the gym and not coming back. So I was like, we're not talking about it because it's not something that should divide. It shouldn't fucking matter. The media have done a fantastic job of making people think that it does matter, and I know that there'll be people sitting there being like, well, it does fucking matter. And it's like, yes, to a degree, in the middle, nice balance. There's, whatever. But the COVID was just like, it's just been the most messed up years. And I just don't like how easy it's been to segregate and generate hate, and how when people feel like they're in the majority, their true colors like really show. Like, there are people that have gained confidence from knowing they're in the majority, and the way that they treat people because they know that they've got numbers behind them. It's just like, don't be a piece of shit. Like, where's your moral compass gone? Like, there's just so much that is being lost because you're looking at things through a straw. That straw being like COVID and vaccinated and unvaccinated. And it's like, don't let that, like, you don't lose your humanity over that. And don't justify your loss of humanity over that. Like, that's what scares me more than anything, I think. And it's just, I don't know. It's so fucked up. I really don't talk about, it's honestly something that I don't really talk about with many people because it is far too divisive. And obviously, like, I've got my opinions, and my opinions, I like to think are educated opinions. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think there's anyone that can separate emotion and address.
It is a very emotional topic.
Yeah, it's and not only that, but like as an example, one of the members of our gym, his father and his sister had really bad reactions to the vaccination. There's no amount of facts that's going to sway him. No amount, because his personal experience is going to trump that every fucking day of the week. I also know people who have lost people to COVID. There is no lick of evidence that's going to change their mind that it's not that it's not as bad as people are making out it is. So it's like, I think we've lost the understanding that people are going to make opinions based off like their own experience with stuff. And like I said, not a lick of fucking evidence is going to change their mind, especially when there's that. And there seems to be like this, for like, people just aren't considering the fact that there are legitimate concerns amongst people in either camp, and they're not addressing them. And that's what's scary, is the amount of conversations that are not being had, and that are being like censored, or the narrative that there's just that one narrative that's being pushed, and anything outside of that is just attacked or censored. Or it's just like, why don't you have some harder conversations or some more honest conversations? Why don't you say, yeah, okay, like obviously being in the health and fitness industry, we're somewhat biased, but it's like, why aren't you having more conversations around health? If it really is about that, which I do believe there's a big part of it that is for sure. Like I'm not in either extreme on many things at all. I'm always somewhat in the middle. I can typically always argue both sides of the story. But if it really is about health, as much as you're saying, let's have some more conversations about health.
Yeah.
Like, yes, get the vaccination, do whatever, but what else can you do to help like reduce the chances of you having it very severely, or reduce anyway? It's just it's too many. There's so many red flags among both parties, amongst both camps, amongst everything that's going on. It's just really unsettling.
We need more green flags.
More green flags. What's a fucking green flag though these days? What's a green flag? But no, COVID. We were pretty lucky throughout COVID. We well, at this, lucky is that we're lucky again at the start, because we already had some online courses available. That was part of our business model as it is. We have a big online program design course, which kind of is like our main source of like our main service of education that we offer. We used to travel a lot for in-person seminars, which obviously were put on hold. So we did have that big loss there. But when COVID hit at the start of 2020, it was obviously just like just a 2-week lockdown, or just a couple months or whatever. So people were like, sweet, like got some time off. I'm gonna educate, like I'm gonna learn while I can't work. So we did have quite a decent influx of people sign up for like our online courses at the start. But then as it kind of like went on, dragged on, and people were like, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, we do not know when we're coming out of this. And we do, especially because how quickly changes were able to be made. Like, it's like one day you're good, the next you're locked in your state, you can't work and you're in quarantine. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, people just started to become super hesitant from the investment, especially because gyms were affected hugely, like you would know. Even in like aside from Melbourne, I think the other place that we have students and clients that was probably got hit the worst was the Netherlands. Like, I think they were shut for like 9 months. I think Canada's just gone back into lockdown again now. I had a couple of clients reach out to us yesterday, so they're like, we have to close gyms from Wednesday, which is what today. And it's just like, wow, yeah, when is this going to end? So people did start to be more frugal, more cautious, and didn't just like spend money because they didn't know when it was going to come in again. So we were affected, but it was kind of like later on into the pandemic. But also the minute that it happened, the minute I think gyms got shut down, because our main clientele through Muscle Nerds is other coaches. So we knew that the majority of our students and clients were going to be affected and not be able to work. And so the minute it happened, I just like went into like I canceled every subscription we didn't need. I rang up, I put payments on hold that I could put on hold. I contacted our staff and I was like, what is the minimum you need to get by? Because we just need, I don't know what's happening. There was only one pay, like they got back to me and they were like, this is all I need to get by. So when that happened, there was only one pay that we paid them that. And then as we realized like, oh, well, no, we're actually kind of doing okay. Like that next pay, I just reimbursed what we'd held back. And then they got full pay the entire time. We, like Luke and I, didn't pay ourselves. We lived off our savings, literally to the point where like we like emptied it. I say we emptied our piggy bank, but I think we had like a couple grand in there because every time I had this habit of every time I go grocery shopping, I would always get out like cash. So like whenever I was at the checkout, I'd just get out like $50 or $100 or whatever. And I just put it like, shove it in the piggy bank. So we lived off our piggy bank for groceries for like a month. So it was really good. So we were affected, but again, like we just went into like crisis mode, and we got by. Like we're really, really lucky that we got by. And I don't know how long it's going to take for businesses to recover completely, but I think there's a lot of people that pivoted. Like one thing that was really interesting to see was obviously we had like a lot of our students, a lot of them owned gyms or were trainers, or they worked out of gyms and they couldn't work. The mindset difference amongst the people who were okay and who weren't. Like there were a handful of like, woe is me, I can't work, like anger, annoyance, this is fucking bullshit, just kind of wallowed. And then there were people that were like, oh well, it is what it is, what are my options, what can I do? And there was like the people that were just like, fuck it, like this is what I'm doing now. Like we had one of our members, and you probably, I mean, we've probably seen this all, like one of our guys, he just recently qualified or graduated as an osteopath. I think he might have been able to work, I don't know, in Melbourne. He's in Melbourne. I don't know whether he could. Anyway, or maybe he hadn't quite graduated, so he couldn't, because I know that I don't think he was deemed essential, but he just started doing online treatments. Like that is not something you would ever prior to COVID be like, yeah, I'm going to get online with my physio. But yeah, and he made it work. He's like, he figured out a way to do like assessments, like people to self-assess, and he found ways to communicate to the point where it was like, okay, just tell me what's going on. Try this. No, you know what I mean? And there was just some people that you could just say that they just were like, took it on the chin. They were like, it is what it is. What can I do? But then there were some people who were just like, sorry, I have to stop paying because I can't, like, I'm just got no money coming in. And it was just like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You got to do something. So yeah, that was really interesting, that the mindset shift of people. And I guess we are lucky that we are, like, online training platforms are so prominent now that it would have been an easy-ish transition for a lot of people. But yeah, losing a good chunk of our gym members and clients and stuff was tough, but like we made it work.
At the end of the day, just like as you mentioned before, and like we've already like touched so many points, and it's like from one end of the spectrum to the other, and just finding that balance. It's like for those who, you know, were doing really shit, but they also had like this victim, like poor me, like poor this mentality that would just, they were too heavily based in that stressed brain, where those who are just like, okay, I can't be at the gym, what else can I do? Like that osteo, I've never heard of someone doing a
online treatment.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then so what we would do is like we would then, because of that, and because he'd actually gotten a loan, like a good decent loan to do like a year's worth of one-on-one education with Luke. So he was very like proactive. He's just has that mindset of growth, obviously, right? But because he started doing that, we were then able to refer our clients from like London to him. Do you know what I mean? Like we had clients, like Shane had clients that were like, oh, you're having issues with your hip, here, jump online with Ash. And so it was kind of like, yeah, it was just because he just decided to pull that trigger, it was just like, oh, cool. So how can we now help? Let's refer people to him. You know what I mean? And he was able to do that. Whereas normally, obviously, you're limited to people that are in your area or neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. It's just finding that balance with everything, you know. Again, like life has its ebbs and flows. Like that's what it is. Like you can't just let one little shitty, well,
Yeah.
COVID wasn't a little shitty incident. It was a very big thing for everyone, and it's affected all of us differently. But it's just like, are you gonna, sit on the ground, be a little bitch about it, and cry over it weeks, months, years, and then eventually look back and be like, oh shit, I could have done X, Y, and Z.
100%.
Like I'm not one to not say, hey, don't feel all the feelings. Like I'm
100%. Yeah.
I'm
For
all for
feeling.
validating your feelings and your emotions and your situation. But there's a time and place for you to be like, okay, am I being proactive right now, or am I just being, a little bitch?
100%. And I also feel like, I mean, I typically don't read comments on social media because it's just people.
Brutal.
But anyway, there was
Worse.
yeah, there's definitely like obviously being bored in some of the lockdowns. Sometimes I did. And I can understand the argument of us saying this, like coming from that place of privilege, like, well, you're like, you didn't lose, I don't have a family to feed. I don't have a skill set that can only be done in person. Like it's a very lucky position for me to be able to say like, well, what are you going to do about it? And saying that though, like I remember, and you might have seen it, there was this video that went around of a mother, like a person, she was like a Melbourne chick, she was completely at breaking point. She was a videographer or a photographer, and so she's like, so I literally can't work, like I literally cannot work. And she said, and when we do open up, I have to work twice as hard to make back the money. She goes, I've got no money, I can't pay rent. And, there are people like that was heartbreaking. And there were people in situations that really were in a fucking bind, like 100% were in a bind. But I think that if you were able to, like, I don't know if I'll get roasted for saying this, but it's like, okay, well, you're a videographer and you're a photographer. You're a skill set that due to social media is such high fucking demand. I would pay to do something online with you for you to teach me how to quickly make some edits. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always a way. And I don't want to jinx myself and then like lose it all and be like homeless. And then someone's like, well, where's your way, Zoe? Like, I feel like that's what, and whenever I say stuff like this, I feel so like.
But I relate to that, like hence the like, luckily enough, the online industry is booming right now. Like there's so much going on. But let's say if it didn't work out, then there's plenty of other jobs there that you can do. Yes, it's not going to be.
Just don't be, optimal. Yeah, it's not going to be optimal.
But like there's something out there that everyone, can eventually do.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. I don't know. The people went through some shit, especially like losing loved ones, not being able to people stuck overseas. Like there was some people in some pretty crappy situations. So like I am mindful and cautious of not just kind of saying be better. But it's interesting. It's really interesting. You can definitely tell the people who like work on self-development and mindset stuff. And yeah, again, I just feel like, just find your balance and just think, well, what can I do? What control do I have? Yeah.
I love that. Such a good point to end today's conversation. Before we go, what are you currently reading?
Oh, do you know what? I'm reading, this series, Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Thorns and Roses. That series, I'm on the second book. Everyone's raving about it. I had to force myself to finish the first book. And the only reason I started the second was because everyone's like, but the second one is so good. Like,
oh no, one of those.
I get it. Like I can understand why people are like loving it and why it's so popular. But I find the main character infuriatingly stupid. She just does things like the premise is like she's this human chick that goes into this like mortal realm, and then she's like amongst like people with like all these like deadly beasts and shit with magic powers and stuff, and she's just like she just says and does the most stupid shit that most people would get killed. She's no consequence for her being like you're awfully smug for someone who doesn't have any magic powers and someone can wash you with their thoughts. I don't know. And it's just infuriating. But anyway, I'm going to finish reading the second book. I don't know if I'll start the third, but the second is a bit better than the first. But that's what I'm reading at the moment. And then in terms of non-fiction, I audio listen to my non-fiction because I read to escape. So at the end of every single day is my like non-negotiable. I read every single night, and it's always fiction because that's like my wind down, switch off. And then I audio book listen to non-fiction because I'm studying. I can't finish like work and study and then go to bed and read a fucking like learn more. I'm like, no, I'm done for the day. I'm done. But the book that I'm listening to at the moment, which is really good actually, especially for people who want to be in business, is called Traction. Yeah, by Gino Wickman.
Right.
It's very, very good. I actually have just finished the audio, but I ordered the physical book because I want to go through and highlight a lot of stuff, but it's very good. I highly recommend.
Done.
I don't recommend The Court of Thorns and Roses, but I do recommend Traction.
Yeah, scratch that one. We're going to go for Gino's.
Yeah. That's it.
Awesome, Zoe. Thank you so much for jumping on today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Has been so freaking cool. Like, not only we spoke about, where Muscle Nerds came from, business, we talk a little bit about life, vaccines, COVID.
A little bit of a rant.
I know, such a good freaking rant. For our listeners, girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure to screenshot it, share it with your friends, family, followers, screenshot, tag the Women's Fitness Academy, tag myself, tag Zoe. Actually, Zoe, before we head off, where can our followers find you?
So me personally, I'm on Instagram under Night Zoe, but all I share pictures of is the dogs and food. I don't know why anyone would follow me. And then if you want to follow Muscle Nerds, we are on Instagram, musclenerds_health. We used to have just Muscle Nerds and we locked ourselves out of it and can't figure out how to get back in. So musclenerds_health is our current Instagram, and then just Muscle Nerds on Facebook. But we kind of just mainly use Instagram lately, actually.
Yeah, Instagram's the place these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like Luke's got a niece who's 17 or 18, and he was like, "Have you got Facebook?" She's like, "Facebook's for old people." I was like, oh.
I guess I'm old.
Is it why they changed it to Meta? Yeah, I guess I'm old. Not anymore. It's now something I don't even understand. This metaverse stuff, like I don't get it. But anyway, as long as the world holds it together within my lifetime, like as long as it doesn't completely fall apart by the time I die, I'm fine. I'm just like holding on and praying that it's not a piece of shit for too much longer. Anyway, yeah, sorry. Night Zoe is me. Like I said, I really don't share anything exciting except the dogs and food. I find dogs exciting, but if you're a dog fan.
I love it. Awesome. Well, girls, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of today's conversation. And till then, take care of your time, manage your diary a little bit better, and take care of your health. Till next time.